Well, look what we have here. You two are a little far from home, aren't you? The words, slick with a saccharine poison, dripped from the gate agent's lips as she looked down her nose at the two boarding passes. In that single condescending question, she wasn't just asking about their origin city. She was questioning their very presence in the first-class line, their right to hold those tickets, their place in the world. She had no idea she wasn't just talking to two teenage girls. She was talking to the daughters of the man who could, with a single phone call, grind her entire airline to a halt. And he was about to do just that. The air in Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 3 was a familiar symphony of chaos. The squeal of luggage wheels on polished linoleum, the distant, garbled announcements of final boarding calls, the low hum of thousands of conversations blending into a single, anxious note. For 17-year-old twins Amara and Zoe Thorne, it was the sound of adventure. They stood in the priority boarding line for Stratus Airlines, Flight 11-7 to San Francisco, Gate K-12. A mixture of nervous excitement and teenage confidence radiated from them. They were identical in appearance, tall and graceful with intricate braids cascading over their shoulders, but their demeanors were worlds apart. Amara had a spark in her eye, a restless energy that made her tap her foot impatiently. She was the debater, the challenger, the one who met injustice head-on. Zoe was the observer. Her calm, analytical gaze took in everything, her mind quietly processing the world around her. She was the strategist, the voice of reason. Together, they were a formidable pair, on their way to present their award-winning robotics project at the prestigious National Youth Innovator Summit. Their father had insisted on first-class tickets. "You've earned the comfort," he'd said, his voice warm over the phone. "Focus on the summit, not on travel stress." The line shuffled forward. At the podium stood a woman in her late 40s. Her Stratus Airlines uniform was immaculate, but her expression was pinched, as if she'd been sucking on a lemon all morning. Her name tag read Brenda. She processed the passengers ahead of them with a mechanical, joyless efficiency. An elderly couple got a thin-lipped smile. A businessman in a tailored suit got a nod of deference. Then it was Amara and Zoe's turn. They stepped forward, placing their boarding passes and passports on the counter. Brenda didn't look at the documents at first. Her eyes raked over the two girls, a slow, deliberate appraisal that was instantly unsettling. It was a look they knew well, the look of surprise that morphed into suspicion. Then came the opening salvo, the sweet poison. "Well, look what we have here. You two are a little far from home, aren't you?" Amara's back stiffened. Zoe placed a subtle, calming hand on her sister's arm. "We're from Chicago," Zoe replied, her voice even and polite. "Our home is about 40 minutes from here." Brenda picked up one of the passports with two fingers, as if it were contaminated. She flicked it open, her eyes narrowing. "Thorne," she muttered, then looked at the first-class ticket. A small, disbelieving scoff escaped her lips. "Right. And where did you get these tickets, girls?" The girls was laced with condescension. Amara couldn't hold back. "Our father bought them, like everyone else here." Brenda's gaze snapped to Amara, cold and hard. "Watch your tone with me, young lady. I have to verify these things. We've had a lot of issues with fraudulent activity recently." She tapped at her keyboard with long acrylic nails, the clicking sound abnormally loud in the tense silence that had fallen between them. Passengers behind the twins began to stir, sensing a delay. Brenda said, leaning back in her chair with a look of feigned thoughtfulness. "I'm not seeing the payment verification for these seats. It looks like the transaction was flagged." Zoe, the logical one, leaned forward slightly. "That's impossible. My father is a Platinum Apex member with your airline. His corporate account is directly linked. There's never been an issue." She used the precise terminology she'd heard her father use, hoping it would signal their legitimacy. Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "Corporate accounts can be compromised. Things get flagged for a reason." She stared at them, a cruel glint in her eyes. "Are you sure your father bought these? You didn't just find a credit card?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and ugly. It wasn't about a payment flag anymore. It was about two young black women standing in a first-class line. The implication was clear. You don't belong here. Are you accusing us of theft? Amara's voice was low, trembling with a tightly controlled fury. I'm not accusing you of anything, Brenda said, her voice a sing-song of mock innocence. I'm just doing my job, protecting the airline's assets. And right now, these 2 seats are assets I can't release. The system won't let me. She gave them a triumphant smirk. I'm afraid you won't be boarding today. You'll need to step aside and go to the customer service desk to sort this out. She reached for the microphone to announce the final boarding call, a clear act of dismissal. The other passengers, a mix of uncomfortable and impatient, began to shuffle around them. An older man in a tweed jacket, a Mr. Henderson, looked at Brenda with disapproval but said nothing. No, Zoe said. Her voice, though quiet, cut through the noise. It was so unexpected from the calmer twin that even Amara turned to look at her. We're not stepping aside. You haven't given us a valid reason. You're making vague claims without providing any proof. I want to see the flag on your screen. Brenda's face flushed with anger. The nerve of this girl, questioning her authority. I don't have to show you anything. This is an issue of security. Now step aside or I'll be forced to call airport security. Call them, Amara challenged, crossing her arms. We've done nothing wrong. Maybe they can figure out why you're refusing to honor our paid tickets. This was it, the line in the sand. Brenda had expected them to be intimidated, to scurry away with their tails between their legs. She had not expected this level of calm, articulate defiance. It enraged her. She picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over the speed dial for her supervisor. You're making a big mistake, she hissed. Zoe looked at her sister, then back at the gate agent. Her analytical mind had processed the situation. Logic had failed. Politeness had failed. There was only one option left. She pulled out her phone. No, Brenda, Zoe said, her voice as cold as ice. You are. She scrolled through her contacts to Dad. As the phone began to ring, Amara watched Brenda's smug face, knowing with absolute certainty that the woman had just ended her own career. She just didn't know it yet. The name on Zoe's phone simply read, Dad. To the world, however, he was Marcus Thorne, the founder and CEO of Thorne Dynamics, a global logistics and technology behemoth that specialized in time-sensitive, high-value cargo transport. Thorne Dynamics was one of the largest, most profitable corporate clients for dozens of airlines, and Stratus Airlines was at the top of that list. His company spent upwards of $150 million a year with them on executive travel and priority freight shipping. Marcus Thorne wasn't just a Platinum Apex member. He was the kind of client whose personal liaison at the airline had the direct number of the vice president of operations. He picked up on the second ring. Zoe, honey, you girls boarding okay? Not exactly, Dad, Zoe said, her voice remarkably steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She quickly and concisely explained the situation. The gate agent's name, the accusation of fraudulent tickets, the refusal to let them see any proof, and the imminent threat of calling security. She omitted the overt racism, sticking only to the verifiable facts. Just as he had taught her, present the problem, not the emotion. On the other end of the line, in a sleek, minimalist office overlooking downtown Chicago, Marcus Thorne's entire demeanor shifted. The warm, paternal tone vanished, replaced by a stillness that was far more terrifying than any shouting. He swiveled his chair to face the window, his knuckles white as he gripped his phone. Put your phone on speaker, Zoe. Let me talk to her, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Zoe did as she was told. Her name is Brenda. She's the gate agent at K-12. Brenda, Marcus Thorne's voice boomed from the small phone speaker, amplified by the tense silence at the gate. It was a voice accustomed to commanding boardrooms and dictating terms. My name is Marcus Thorne. I am the father of the 2 young women you are currently detaining. I am also the individual whose credit card, linked to the Thorne Dynamics corporate account, paid for those first-class seats. Can you please explain to me why you are refusing to let my daughters board the plane? Brenda was visibly taken aback. The voice on the phone was not what she expected. It was deep, articulate, and radiated an authority that made the hair on her arms stand up. But her pride and her prejudice wouldn't let her back down. She saw it as a bluff. Sir, this is a private matter for the airline. she said, trying to sound professional. I can't discuss payment details with just anyone over the phone. As I told the young ladies, they need to go to customer service. By now, a supervisor had arrived, a harried-looking man named David Chen. He saw the escalating situation, the two defiant girls, the angry gate agent, the restless passengers, and the phone on speaker. "What's the problem here, Brenda?" he asked, his voice tight with stress. "These two have tickets that are flagged in the system. They refuse to move, and now they've got someone on the phone pretending to be their father," she said, her voice dripping with insinuation. "Pretending?" Marcus Thorne's voice cut through the air like a razor. "Mr. Chen, is it? My name is Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Dynamics. My Stratus corporate account number is TD771 Alpha. Look it up. Right now. You have 30 seconds before I make a call that you will regret far more than this one." David Chen's face went pale. TD771 Alpha. He didn't even need to look it up. Every senior manager at O'Hare knew that account prefix. It was a white glove account, a designation for their top-tier clients who generated tens of millions in revenue. This wasn't some random disgruntled father. This was a 5-alarm fire. "Sir, Mr. Thorne, I do apologize," David stammered, grabbing the keyboard from Brenda. His fingers flew across the keys. Of course, there was no flag. The tickets were pristine, paid in full, linked to one of the most secure corporate accounts in their system. Brenda had lied, or more accurately, she had manifested a reality based on her own biases. "Brenda, what the hell are you talking about? These tickets are perfectly fine," David hissed at her under his breath. He turned his attention back to the podium. "My deepest apologies for the misunderstanding, girls. Please go ahead and board. We'll get your bags settled." He tried to offer a reassuring smile, but it looked more like a grimace. He gestured towards the jet bridge, but Amara didn't move. Zoe didn't move. They just looked at each other. The humiliation, the baseless accusation, the threat, it couldn't be erased by a hurried, insincere apology from a panicked manager. "No, thank you," Amara said, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "We no longer feel safe flying on your airline." Zoe added, "The flight crew has now been witness to your agent accusing us of fraud. We have been treated like criminals. We will not be boarding." She then spoke into the phone. "Dad, they're trying to rush us onto the plane now, but we don't want to go." Marcus Thorne had heard everything. The panicked backtrack, his daughter's refusal. He felt a surge of pride in their strength, followed by a cold, calculated rage. They had crossed a line that wasn't just about customer service. They had attacked his children. "All right, girls, step away from the gate. Go sit down somewhere comfortable. I'll handle this," he said. Then his tone shifted back to steel. "Mr. Chen, you have failed. You had an opportunity to de-escalate, and you failed. You backed an employee who was engaged in what is clearly discriminatory behavior. You are a liability to your company." Marcus hung up on Chen. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten any further. The time for talking to gate managers was over. He pressed a button on his console. "Caroline, get me Robert Walsh on his private line. Now." Robert Walsh was the CFO of Thorne Dynamics. "Robert," Marcus said when the call connected. "It's Marcus. Initiate Protocol Omega. Effective immediately. All contracts, freight and passenger, with Stratus Airlines are suspended. I want every single piece of Thorne cargo pulled from their planes, globally. I want every corporate booking for the next quarter canceled. Inform the board we are invoking the malfeasance clause in our service agreement, and get Isabel Reed on the line. Tell her we have a major discrimination case and to meet me at my office in an hour." Protocol Omega. It was a contingency plan designed for catastrophic partner failure, a plane crash, a massive data breach, or an act of gross corporate negligence. It had never been used before. It was a corporate nuclear option. Within minutes, an email blasted from Thorne Dynamics headquarters to the Stratus Airlines C-suite and their global logistics hubs. The subject line was stark: immediate suspension of all Thorne Dynamics services. At Gate K-12, David Chen was still trying to coax the twins into boarding. At the same moment, his work phone buzzed violently in his pocket. A red flag alert from corporate. He looked at it, and the blood drained from his face. It was a notification to all O'Hare ground operations. Cease all loading of Thorn Dynamics cargo. Offload any and all TD designated containers from Stratos aircraft immediately. Flight 1107 to San Francisco, the very plane Amara and Zoe were supposed to be on, had several of those containers in its belly. It couldn't take off. No Stratus flight carrying Thorn cargo could. The cascade had begun. Brenda, watching her manager's face turn to a mask of sheer horror, finally began to understand that she hadn't just made a mistake. She had lit a fuse. The implementation of Protocol Omega was brutally efficient. Thorn Dynamics was a logistics company at its core. They moved things with ruthless precision, and that precision was now weaponized against Stratus Airlines. On the tarmac at O'Hare, a ground crew supervisor for Stratus, a man named Mike, received the alert on his handheld terminal. He stared at it in disbelief. Offload TD cargo from 1107? We're 10 minutes from pushback. He radioed the pilot. The pilot, confused and annoyed, radioed the tower. The tower, seeing the official alert from Stratus Corporate, had no choice but to deny clearance. Flight 1107 was stuck at the gate. The same scene played out in rapid succession across the country and the world. In Frankfurt, a 747 cargo plane, 80% filled with Thorn Dynamics biopharmaceutical shipments, was grounded. In Hong Kong, a massive shipment of microprocessors was halted on the loading belt. In Newark, 3 separate domestic flights were delayed as baggage handlers scrambled to find and remove the specific, high-priority TD containers from their holds. The system was grinding to a halt. Stratus's primary revenue stream wasn't just passengers. It was high-margin corporate cargo, like the kind Thorn Dynamics provided. Pulling that cargo didn't just delay flights, it ripped a hole in the day's projected revenue. Each grounded plane was a geyser of lost money, fuel wasted, crew hours burned, landing slots missed, and passenger connections broken. Back at Gate K-12, the passengers of Flight 1107 were growing mutinous. The initial 10-minute delay became 30, then an hour. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, strained and vague. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing an unforeseen logistical issue with the cargo manifest. We have no timetable for departure at this moment. Meanwhile, Amara and Zoe had found a quiet seating area away from the gate. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a strange sense of calm disbelief. Zoe was tracking the Stratus stock price on her phone. Amara was watching the chaos at their former gate unfold. Brenda had been whisked away by a stone-faced David Chen. The new gate agents were fielding a barrage of angry questions. Their father called back, "Girls, a car is on its way to you. Terminal 3 arrivals, door 3A. A black Escalade. The driver's name is Frank. He'll take you home. We'll sort out the summit later. Right now, I just want you home safe." His voice was warm again. The paternal tone returned. "What did you do, Dad?" Amara asked, a hint of awe in her voice. "I did what was necessary," he said simply. "This isn't about a flight anymore. This is about respect. Now get some rest. I'll see you at home tonight." As they made their way to the arrivals level, another man approached them tentatively. It was Mr. Henderson, the older man in the tweed jacket from the boarding line. "Excuse me, young ladies," he said, his voice kind. "I saw what happened up there. It was disgraceful, utterly disgraceful. I recorded some of it on my phone. The part where she accused you of stealing and threatened to call security." He held up his phone. "I don't want to intrude, but if you need a witness, if you need proof, I have it." Zoe and Amara exchanged a look. "Thank you, sir." "Thank you very much," Zoe said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "Could you perhaps send that to me?" Mr. Henderson nodded. "Of course. And for what it's worth, you handled yourselves with more grace than any adult I know." As they got into the waiting Escalade, Zoe's phone buzzed with the incoming video file. It was 2 minutes long, shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. Brenda's sneering voice, her baseless accusations, Amara's defiant response, their own calm requests. It was damning. Zoe forwarded the video to one contact, Isabel Reed, their father's lawyer, with the subject line, "Evidence." The chaos at Stratus Airlines was just beginning. In the corporate headquarters, panic had set in. The CEO of Stratus, a silver-haired man named Richard Brown, was in an emergency meeting with his executive board. "What do you mean he pulled everything?" Brown roared. "Over a single customer service complaint? That's insane." "It wasn't a single complaint, Richard," the VP of North American Operations said, his face ashen. "It was Marcus Thorne's daughters. They were subjected to, and I'm quoting our own panicked station manager, a flagrant and aggressive act of racial profiling by a gate agent. We denied them boarding. Thorne called. We fumbled the response, and he dropped the hammer." "How bad is it?" Brown asked, dreading the answer. "As of right now," the CFO chimed in, looking at a tablet, "we have 47 flights grounded or experiencing severe delays directly related to the Thorne offload order. Our estimated losses for the next 24 hours alone are ticking past $8 million. The ripple effects on our international connections will push that to well over $20 million by morning. And that's before we even calculate the long-term loss of the Thorne Dynamics contract, which is worth, I remind you, over $150 million annually." A junior PR executive timidly raised her hand. "Sir, there's another problem. A video of the incident at the gate is starting to circulate on Twitter. The hashtag #YasherStratos shutdown is picking up steam." Richard Brown sank into his chair, the color draining from his face. This wasn't a logistical problem anymore. It was a full-blown, company-killing catastrophe. And it all started with one employee, Brenda, at Gate K-12, who decided 2 young black girls in first class was a sight she simply couldn't tolerate. The dominoes were falling, and they were picking up speed. The video Mr. Henderson had taken was the spark that lit the wildfire. Initially posted with a simple caption, "Disgusting behavior by Stratus Airlines staff at ORD today." It began its life humbly, a few dozen retweets, 100 likes. But the internet has a way of finding its focus. Someone recognized the Thorne name. A tech blogger connected the dots between the viral video and the sudden, mysterious grounding of Stratus flights. Within 3 hours, the hashtag Stratus shutdown wasn't just trending, it was the #1 topic worldwide. The 2-minute video was everywhere. News outlets, starved for summer drama, pounced on it. It was the perfect storm, clear-cut injustice, a powerful David and Goliath narrative, except David was secretly Goliath's biggest customer, and the instant visible consequences of corporate chaos. The story framed itself. Twin black teens denied boarding until their CEO dad unleashes financial Armageddon on airline. Stratus Airlines' PR department, caught completely flat-footed, made a critical error. They released a boilerplate statement. Stratus Airlines is aware of an incident at Chicago O'Hare involving a disagreement over boarding pass verification. We are also experiencing system-wide logistical delays. We apologize for any inconvenience to our customers and are working to resolve both situations. The statement was a disaster. A disagreement? It was a public shaming. Logistical delays? They were self-inflicted wounds from a PR catastrophe. The public saw it for the soulless, evasive corporate speak it was, and the backlash intensified. The comments were brutal. A disagreement? Call it what it is. Racism. My disagreement is that I'll be canceling my Stratos credit card. Stratos shutdown isn't a logistical delay. It's karma. Meanwhile, in a glass-walled conference room at the law firm of Covington and Brown, Isabel Reed was holding a masterclass. She was a powerhouse lawyer in her early 50s, known for her sharp mind and even sharper suits. She had the video playing on a large screen for Marcus, Amara, and Zoe. "This is airtight," Isabel said, pausing the video on a close-up of Brenda's sneering face. "Mr. Henderson is a godsend. We have the agent's unsubstantiated claims, her threatening posture, and your calm, reasonable requests for clarification, Amara and Zoe. This isn't just a case for damages for emotional distress. This is a textbook example of consumer racial profiling." She turned to Marcus. "The Protocol Omega move was brilliant, Marcus. Utterly ruthless, but brilliant. You've already established quantifiable damages for Thorne Dynamics through their breach of service. They didn't just disrespect your family, they failed to provide the secure, reliable service you pay them a fortune for. By grounding their own fleet to pull your cargo, they proved your point for you." "So what's the next move?" Marcus asked. We don't do a thing. We let them bleed, Isabel said with a cool smile. Their stock is already in free fall. They lost 12% by market close. Tomorrow will be worse. They will come to us. Richard Brown will call you, groveling. When he does, you don't take the call. You refer him to me. We are in a position of absolute power. We will dictate the terms of their surrender. She then looked at Amara and Zoe with genuine admiration. You two, you missed your summit, and I am truly sorry for that. But what you've done today will be taught in the business schools and law schools for years. You faced down discrimination, stood your ground, and triggered a corporate accountability event of a magnitude I've never seen. You are the story, and we will control that narrative. Amara and Zoe exchanged a look. This was all so much bigger than a ruined trip. They had been thrust into the center of a national conversation. Their phones were buzzing incessantly with messages from friends, family, and even strangers who had seen the story. The chaos for Stratus was deepening. Competitor airlines were feasting on their misfortune, offering distress fares to stranded Stratus passengers. Corporate clients were calling, spooked by the instability and the PR nightmare, asking about the escape clauses in their own contracts. The Stratus brand was becoming toxic in real time. That evening, Richard Brown, the CEO of Stratos, sat in his office, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his exhausted face. He was watching the Henderson video for the 10th time. He saw Brenda's smugness, her petty tyranny. He saw the dignity of the two young women she was tormenting, and he finally understood. This wasn't about a flag ticket or a misunderstanding. It was about a deep, corrosive rot within his own company's culture, a rot that had been allowed to fester and had now erupted, costing them hundreds of millions of dollars and potentially their entire reputation. He picked up his phone to call Marcus Thorne. As Isabel Reed had predicted, it went straight to a crisp, professional voicemail. He then tried the main line for Thorne Dynamics and asked for the CEO's office. A polite but firm executive assistant answered, "I'm sorry, Mr. Brown. Mr. Thorne is not available. All communications regarding the Stratus Airlines matter are to be directed to Ms. Isabel Reed at Covington & Brown. Would you like her number?" Brown hung up the phone. It was over. They had lost control. Now they would have to pay the price, and the first bill was about to come due for the woman at the center of it all. Brenda. Brenda Kowalski's world began to unravel with the shrill, intrusive ring of her phone at 7 o'clock that evening. It was David Chen, her station manager, but the familiar voice on the line was stripped of all its usual collegial warmth, leaving behind only the cold, brittle tone of a man delivering a verdict. "Brenda, you need to come to the main airport offices tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock sharp," he said, his words clipped and precise. "You'll be meeting with Sarah Jensen from corporate HR. Don't go to the terminal. Don't go to your usual post. And I strongly advise you to bring your union representative." The words corporate HR and union representative landed like stones in her stomach. "My union rep? David, what is all this?" she asked, a defensive tremor in her voice. "It was a simple verification issue. They can't possibly be taking this seriously. They were just two kids with a massive attitude problem, trying to game the system." A long, weary sigh traveled through the phone, a sound heavy with a day's worth of corporate hell. "Brenda, this is not a simple issue. This is the only issue. The only thing anyone from here to headquarters is talking about. Just be there. And I'm telling you as a courtesy, not as your manager anymore. Say nothing to anyone. Don't post a single word on Facebook. Don't talk to your friends about it. Just show up at 8. Before she could protest further, the line went dead, leaving an echoing silence. She spent a torturous, sleepless night locked in a torment of her own making. Her mind cycled furiously through a Rolodex of emotions. Righteous indignation at being questioned, simmering resentment towards the Thorne girls for their calm, privileged defiance, and a creeping, terrifying dread that began to seep into the cracks of her confidence. She endlessly replayed the scene in her mind, editing it, recasting herself as the diligent protector of company policy, a lone bulwark against fraud. It looked suspicious, she told herself, clutching her pillow. I was just doing my job. They were the ones who escalated it. But in the quiet, suffocating darkness of her bedroom, the logic frayed. She couldn't escape the memory of Zoe's chillingly calm stare, nor the sound of Marcus Thorne's voice, a voice that didn't shout but resonated with an absolute world-breaking authority she had never encountered. Driven by a gnawing anxiety, she opened her laptop. She typed Stratus Airlines into the search bar. The screen flooded with headlines that made the air leave her lungs. Nyasha Stratus shutdown, the viral video, and then the stock chart, a cliff dive of epic proportions. She watched the 2-minute video, her own face twisted in a smug, condescending sneer that she didn't even recognize. She scrolled through the comments, thousands of them, a torrent of digital vitriol aimed directly at the anonymous gate agent. At her. The next morning, while numbly stirring her coffee, the final confirmation of her doom flickered to life on the national morning news. There she was, a still frame from Mr. Henderson's video, broadcast in high definition to millions, her face the official portrait of corporate racism. The chyron beneath it read, "Airline in crisis. Gate agent's confrontation sparks billion-dollar firestorm." Her name wasn't used, but it didn't matter. Her career was over. She was now infamous. The meeting with HR was as clinical and brutal as an autopsy. The conference room was a sterile, soulless box on the corporate campus, a place far removed from the bustling energy of the terminal. Seated at the table were 2 HR executives, including the formidable Sarah Jensen and Brenda's union rep, a perpetually exhausted man named Gary, who already looked defeated. He'd seen the video. He knew this wasn't a salvageable situation. Sarah Jensen did not ask for Brenda's side of the story. She began with a cold formality. "Ms. Kowalski, we have conducted a full review of the incident at Gate K-12 yesterday. We have the sworn statement from your direct supervisor, Mr. Chen. We have the complete system logs from your terminal, which show conclusively that there was never a security flag, payment alert, or any other anomaly associated with tickets issued to Amara and Zoe Thorne. And we have this." She turned a large tablet around. The Henderson video began to play, the audio echoing slightly in the silent room. Brenda was forced to watch her own petty tyranny, her own sneering words, her own baseless accusations. She stared at her hands, her face burning with a shame so profound it felt like a physical illness. When the video ended, Sarah spoke. "Your actions were in direct violation of Stratus Airlines' Employee Code of Conduct, specifically Sections 4, 7, and 11, which govern customer treatment, our zero-tolerance non-discrimination policy, and ethical conduct. You falsified a reason for denying boarding to paying customers. You engaged in discriminatory behavior. You made defamatory accusations. Your actions have resulted in what is, without any exaggeration, the single most damaging and costly incident in the 50-year history of this company." On the table between them lay a printout of the Stratos stock performance over the last 24 hours. Sarah tapped it with a pen. "This is you, Ms. Kowalski." Gary, the union rep, cleared his throat and made a feeble attempt. "Sarah, Brenda is a 15-year employee with a previously clean record. In cases of misconduct, the collective bargaining agreement outlines a path to remediation, perhaps a suspension and mandatory retraining." Sarah Jensen cut him off with a swift, dismissive slice of her hand. "Gary, stop. The collective bargaining agreement does not cover conduct that results in nearly $1 billion of lost market capitalization. The damage is catastrophic. We have lost our largest corporate freight partner. We are facing a lawsuit that will, in all likelihood, run into 9 figures. There is no retraining for this. There is only severance." And that was it. She was handed a box to clean out her locker and was escorted from the building by security. 15 years of her life erased in a 15-minute meeting, but the true karmic retribution was only just beginning. Her firing was a footnote in the company's public apology, but the internet's vigilantes had already found her. Her full name, Brenda Kowalski, was plastered across social media, permanently linked to the video. Her Facebook profile was a cesspool of hatred. Her home address was doxed on a dark corner of Reddit. She was forced to delete every trace of her online life, effectively becoming a ghost. She desperately tried to find another job. 15 years of airline experience had to be worth something, but she was a pariah. In one phone interview for a customer service manager position at a hotel chain, Things were going wonderfully until the interviewer paused. I just need to do a quick search online. Oh, he said, his voice suddenly changing. I see. Thank you for your time, Ms. Kowalski. We'll be in touch. He never was. She was unemployable. The financial pressure became a suffocating weight. Brenda was not a woman of means. She lived paycheck to paycheck in a small mortgage bungalow. Crucially, she was the sole financial support for her elderly mother, who suffered from severe emphysema. Her mother's stability, the expensive oxygen concentrator, the specific nebulizer medications, the weekly visits from a respiratory nurse, was entirely dependent on Brenda's job and the premium health insurance it provided. With her income gone and the COBRA payments to continue her insurance laughably out of reach, she had no choice but to switch her mother to a bare-bones state Medicaid plan. The new plan was a bureaucratic nightmare. The preferred medications were not covered. The oxygen machine was replaced with a cheaper, noisier model. The nurse visits were cut in half. One afternoon, listening to her mother's shallow, ragged breathing from the next room, the full, crushing weight of the irony hit Brenda with the force of a physical blow. At Gate K-12, she had wielded her microscopic sliver of power to make two innocent girls feel powerless, judged, and less than. She had looked down on them from her perch of petty authority. Now she was the one who was truly powerless. She was the one spending hours on the phone, begging an indifferent bureaucrat on a recorded line to approve a life-sustaining medication for her mother. She was the one being judged and dismissed at every turn. She had become the architect of her own misery, and worse, the misery of the one person she loved. The hard karma wasn't just a lost job or a tarnished name. It was sitting in the dim light of her living room, listening to the wheezing echoes of her own cruelty, a constant, agonizing reminder of the day she chose to be unkind, and in doing so, destroyed everything that mattered. For Stratus Airlines, the financial hemorrhaging was not a slow leak. It was a severed artery. The hard karma was not a distant threat. It was a flash flood of financial and public relations ruin that swept through every level of the corporation. The C-suite, once a sanctuary of calm, strategic thinking, had devolved into a frantic war room where every new report brought another wave of bad news. The stock, which had already suffered a catastrophic plunge, continued its freefall in pre-market trading, triggering circuit breakers that only amplified the sense of panic among investors. The 6EU Washington Stratus shutdown hashtag was no longer just a trend. It was a brand-defining meme, appearing in late-night monologues and morning news roundups. Their competitors were ruthless, launching aggressive ad campaigns targeting Stratus's core business routes, offering sanctuary fares for passengers stranded by the Stratus meltdown. The phones in their corporate sales department rang incessantly, but they weren't new bookings. They were longtime corporate partners, spooked by the instability and the toxic PR, calling to activate the emergency exit clauses in their own multi-million-dollar contracts. CEO Richard Brown felt like the captain of a ship tearing itself apart in a hurricane of his own making. In an emergency board meeting, the numbers laid out by his CFO were apocalyptic. Beyond the immediate loss of the Thorne Dynamics contract, the CFO explained, his face grim, we've now had 4 other Fortune 500 clients suspend their accounts, pending a review of the situation. The cost of rebooking and compensating tens of thousands of stranded passengers is projected to exceed $30 million. The overtime for ground crews, the fuel costs for grounded planes, the fines for missed landing slots. Richard, we are bleeding close to $100 million in tangible losses, and the damage to our brand's goodwill is, frankly, incalculable. Brown knew that firing a single employee and issuing a limp press release was like using a teacup to bail out the Titanic. The source of the storm was singular: Marcus Thorne, and the only path through the storm led directly to the office of his notoriously formidable lawyer, Isabel Reed. Swallowing what was left of his pride, Brown made the most humiliating call of his professional life. "Ms. Reed," he began, the words feeling foreign and brittle in his own mouth. "Richard Brown, I believe we need to talk." Isabel Reed's voice on the other end was not triumphant or gloating. It was as cool and sharp as surgical steel. "I agree, Mr. Brown. My clients are prepared to listen. We can meet tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. I suggest you come prepared to discuss a global resolution. And Richard, she added, her tone dropping a degree colder, bring whomever you need to sign the checks. Don't waste my client's time. The meeting was a masterclass in annihilation. Brown arrived with his lead counsel and two other corporate lawyers from their top-tier firm. They walked into the main conference room at Covington and Brown, a vast space of dark wood, brushed steel, and a single immense window that offered a panoramic view of the city, a view of the world from a position of power. They found only two people waiting for them, Isabel Reed, poised at the head of the table, and Marcus Thorne, seated to her right. He wasn't looking at them, but rather out the window, his presence a silent, looming thundercloud. Brown began with a prepared, deeply rehearsed apology. He spoke of his profound and personal regret, of the systemic reviews already underway, of his shame that such an incident could happen under his leadership. He sounded earnest, broken. Isabel let the silence hang in the room after he finished, allowing his words to evaporate into insignificance. Then she leaned forward, her hands clasped. Thank you for that performance, Richard. I'm sure your PR team approved. Now let's talk about restitution. Your company's actions created two distinct and actionable sets of damages. First, the profound personal injury inflicted upon the Thorne family. Second, the flagrant breach of contract and resulting financial injury to Thorne Dynamics. She slid a slim, elegant folder across the polished table. Let's begin with the Thorne family. For the public humiliation, defamation of character, and severe emotional distress inflicted upon two 17-year-old girls by your employee, on your property, and under your authority, we are demanding a public settlement of $20 million. Brown's lead counsel, a man named Bob Langer, physically recoiled. $20 million? That's an absurd figure. It's completely unprecedented for a personal injury claim of this nature. Isabel's eyes narrowed. What's unprecedented, Bob, is a gate agent's racism costing a company $1 billion in market value before lunchtime. What's unprecedented is my client having the power to cripple your global logistics and choosing to do so. The number is $20 million, and that money will not go to the Thorne family. It will be donated in a very public ceremony to a newly established foundation run by Amara and Zoe Thorne. It will be named in perpetuity the Gate K-12 Foundation. Its charter will be twofold: to provide STEM education scholarships for underprivileged minority girls and to fund a legal action group that combats and litigates cases of consumer racial profiling. Your money will be used to ensure what you did to the Thorne girls never happens to anyone else. It is a non-negotiable term. Marcus Thorne finally turned his gaze from the window, his eyes locking onto Brown's. There was no anger in them, only an unnerving calm. You will fund your own atonement, he stated. It was not a suggestion. Isabel slid a second, thicker folder across the table. Next, Thorne Dynamics. Your Platinum Apex corporate contract contains a specific service guarantee of secure, reliable, and unimpeded transport. Your agent's actions and your management's subsequent failure to immediately rectify them constituted gross negligence, thereby triggering the malfeasance and penalty clause. The direct cost to your airline in the first 72 hours, a figure we have independently calculated using public flight data, cargo manifests, and market analysis, was approximately $54 million. The direct cost to Thorne Dynamics for securing alternate, last-minute transport for time-critical shipments with your competitors was $12 million. The damage to our supply chain reliability and partner confidence is, of course, harder to quantify, but we are confident a jury would see it as being worth north of $100 million. She paused, letting the colossal figure settle in the suffocatingly quiet room. However, in the interest of a swift resolution, we will settle the corporate claim for a one-time payment of $75 million. You will also issue a formal, public letter of apology addressed to Thorne Dynamics, admitting your security protocols and service guarantees failed, and of course our contract will be terminated, effective immediately, with no penalties to our side. This is punitive, one of the other lawyers muttered. It's extortion. No, Marcus Thorne corrected him, his voice cutting through the tension. This is accountability. This is the bill for your company's arrogance. Consider yourselves lucky. If we took this to a jury, with that video as Exhibit A, your stock would hit zero before the closing arguments. This settlement is you saving what's left of your airline." Brown looked at Langer, his lead counsel, who stared down at the table, offering no defense. There was none to offer. They were outmaneuvered, outclassed, and utterly defeated. "There is one final set of terms," Isabel said, her voice dropping as she went in for the kill. "This is not just about money. This is about institutional change. You will hire an independent external auditor, selected from a list we provide, to conduct a comprehensive, top-to-bottom review of your company's hiring, training, promotion, and complaint resolution practices. You will implement a zero-tolerance policy on discrimination, and the consequences will be clear, public, and immediate. You will implement mandatory quarterly bias and de-escalation training for every single customer-facing employee. This training will not be an internal HR video. It will be designed and administered by an external civil rights advocacy firm of our choosing." She saved the last term for the end, delivering it directly to Brown. "And finally, Richard, you will tender your resignation, effective no later than the close of business Friday." That was the killing blow. "My resignation?" Brown whispered, the blood draining from his face. "Accountability starts at the top," Marcus said, standing up to his full height, casting a long shadow over the table. "You presided over the corporate culture that allowed a Brenda Kowalski to feel safe in her prejudice. A culture that trains supervisors to manage problems, not solve them. The rot grew on your watch. It stops with you. A new CEO is the only way the market and the public will believe you are serious about a new beginning. Your board will fight you on it for a day, and then they'll thank you for being the sacrificial lamb that allows them to move forward. It is the only way to save the company." Richard Brown sat back in his chair, a broken man. The price of surrender was total. It was financial, it was structural, and it was deeply, humiliatingly personal. He looked at his team of high-priced lawyers who could offer nothing but grim, silent confirmation. He had no cards left to play. He let out a long, shuddering breath. "Agreed," he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "All terms agreed." Within a week, the business world was rocked by the news. Stratus Airlines announced a landmark settlement, including a stunning $20 million endowment for the newly formed Gate K-12 Foundation. And their CEO, Richard Brown, had officially stepped down to pursue other opportunities. Buried deep within their quarterly SEC filing was a single cryptic line item, a one-time contractual service failure charge of $75 million. The karma that struck Stratus Airlines was not a simple stock dip. It was a forced, painful, and hideously expensive public exorcism. They were compelled to pay for their sins in cash, in reputation, and in power. They were humbled, broken, and forced to rebuild from the smoldering ashes of a fire that was ignited by a single ugly spark of bigotry at Gate K-12. In the end, Amara and Zoe never made it to the Youth Innovators Summit. Instead, they became innovators of a different kind. The Gate K-12 Foundation became their project, a testament not to their skills in robotics, but to their resilience in the face of ugliness. They didn't just win a trophy, they ignited a movement, proving that standing up for your dignity can have consequences that ripple through boardrooms and change the very fabric of a billion-dollar corporation. Marcus Thorne showed what happens when power is used not for accumulation, but for protection and justice. And Brenda? Her story serves as a harsh, cautionary tale, a reminder that the small-time tyrants of the world, those who wield their tiny scraps of authority like weapons, often end up being the primary victims of the wars they start. The world doesn't always deliver justice, but on that chaotic day in August, for Stratus Airlines and for Brenda Kowalski, the bill came due. It was paid in full, with interest. What did you think of this story? Does it show how quickly things can escalate? The story of the Thorne twins is a powerful example of how standing your ground against injustice can trigger an avalanche of accountability. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more tales of karma, justice, and the unexpected ways the world rights its wrongs, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell so you never miss a story. Let us know in the comments. What would you have done in the twin situation?